This week in Jamaica Now, conviction quashed, but Vybz Kartel will have to convince a Jamaican court that a retrial for murder should not be ordered. Dr. Kevin Blake is to take over as head of the Jamaican Police Force. A mother, her 2 daughters and a grandchild killed in a suspected arson. And the government announces goodies for pensioners, but criticisms have come from the opposition as a new budget debate opens. I'm Jovan Johnson and this is Jamaica Now. The Jamaican Court of Appeal is to decide whether entertainer Vybz Kartel and 3 of his co-accused, Sean Storm Campbell, Kahira Jones and Andre St John, should be retried for murder. The Privy Council ruled on Thursday that the convictions were unsafe and had to be overturned on grounds of alleged juror misconduct. Lord Lloyd Jones read out the unanimous judgment of the court.
The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council has unanimously concluded that the appeals should be allowed and the appellant's convictions should be quashed on the ground of juror misconduct, and that the case should be remitted to the Court of Appeal of Jamaica to decide whether to order a retrial of the appellants for the murder of Clive Williams. The Board has considerable sympathy with the dilemma faced by the trial judge on the final day of a long and complex trial. Following the allegations of bribery, he had either to continue with the 11 remaining jurors or to discharge the jury. Despite this, the Board considers that the approach taken by the judge was a material irregularity in the course of the trial, which makes it necessary to quash the convictions. This is for 3 reasons. First, the direction to the jury on the final day was inadequate to save the situation. The judge simply reminded the jury that they had sworn or affirmed that they would return verdicts in accordance with the evidence they had heard in court. The judge did not refer to the alleged bribery, of which, if the allegations were true, the jurors were already aware. Secondly, the trial continued with the allegedly corrupt juror serving as one of its 11 members. In the Board's view, there should have been no question of allowing Juror X to continue to serve on the jury. Allowing Juror X to remain on the jury is fatal to the safety of the convictions which followed. It was an infringement of the appellant's fundamental right to a fair hearing under the Jamaican Constitution. Thirdly, the judge should have considered whether the remaining jurors might have become, consciously or unconsciously, prejudiced for or against one or more of the appellants as a result of Juror X's behavior. For example, there was a danger that the attempted bribe could have made the other jurors overcompensate, consciously or unconsciously, if they assumed that the offer must have come from one of the appellants and that therefore they must be guilty. The judge took no account of this risk.
After 64 days of trial, Kartel and the 3 other men were convicted on March 13, 2014 of the murder of Clive Lizard Williams in 2011. They were given life sentences a month later. In April 2020, the Jamaican Court of Appeal unanimously dismissed their appeal. They appealed to the Privy Council on 3 grounds. One was related to timing when the jury was allowed to consider their verdict, and the second was about access to phone records. The case turned on the 3rd ground, which involved the trial judge continuing with Livingston Kane, a juror who was accused of offering to bribe members to return a not guilty verdict. Mr. Kane was later convicted of perverting the course of justice. Meanwhile, residents of Waterford in Portmore St Catherine, where Kartel is from, celebrated the Privy Council's decision.
Jesus!
Yeah, man.
So you dream straight?
You
dream.
Not me, my mother.
Yes.
Dream.
What time
And dream, and tell me something. I'm going to look for him.
Yeah.
And tell him, say, him I got free. Him I got free. Him too good.
So you didn't get the message
Him is
to
a
him?
good man.
You didn't get the message to him?
Yes. We get the message to him. We get the message to him. God is good.
One
All the children them love him. And a little bit him doing here. Him do a lot for we. God is good. All the time.
When I put the last CI. We not broke, we not hungry again, we nice again, and be a class power foot again. Pick up the vibes. And where you get the new clocks? And be a clocks, and be it little more. And be a sitting. My belly full again. Be a straight jeans and fit it again. Remember that. And white t-shirt, we did it. No matter how powerful, come on, Jesus, you Only for clocks again. Only for straight jeans and fit it for them again. We're faking. One DJ, 1 5 started. Big up Sean Campbell, see him. Yeah, man, the in-law, see him.
Meanwhile, attorneys for Sean Storm Campbell admitted that the outcome was not fully what they wanted.
It's not what we wanted, wholesomely, but we are grateful that justice was served in that the Privy Council found that there was injustice in respect of the jury tampering issue, and we are happy that that result, that was the result of the Court of Appeal. But we have a challenge ahead of us in respect of the retrial issue, and so that's why you're not seeing me jumping up and down at this time, though we are grateful that the conviction was quashed.
This conviction, which has been worldwide in its broadcast by media throughout the world, has been quashed. This is as a result of hard work. The reasons for quashing the case in the Privy Council, we argued those very grounds before the Court of Appeal of Jamaica, who turned us away. And therefore, the final Court of Appeal has vindicated and made the efforts that we have made, that we had an arguable case. We were alarmed when the Jamaican Court of Appeal did not take that jury point. And it took another court to say there was a breach of the constitutional rights of Sean Campbell. We are thinking that this is an instructive judgment. It ought not to have had to go to the Privy Council. It should have been stopped by the trial judge. If not, it should have been stopped by the Jamaican Court of Appeal. And therefore, the men who have been convicted for 10 years, and one day today, the 14th of March, they will live again for a retrial consideration.
And Mr. Samuels said he will be seeking to get instructions from his client on the next step. But he says Mr. Campbell now has the right to apply for bail because he's now awaiting the decision of the court whether he should move to trial or not. In other news, the police are still hunting for the attackers who set fire to a house in Central Village, St Catherine, killing 4 members of a family. The incident happened early Tuesday morning in a section of Central Village known as Compound. The deceased have been identified as 48-year-old Nicola Clark, her 2 daughters, 13-year-old Sora White and Nicola James, and Miss James's 4-year-old son, Caden Patterson. 3 of them were found on the veranda of the 3-bedroom house. Head of the St. Catherine Fire Division, Superintendent Dennis Lyon, said Sora's body was found in the bathroom. Mayor of Spanish Town, Norman Scott, has condemned the incident.
This is unforgivable. This is unwarranted. This is the unspeakable. When you maim, murder, young one, elderly, and female, Jamaica has gotten to a new low. In all my 26 years of representation for this community, I've never seen something like this. I would never ever expect that the community that is so loving, so caring, could have gone to this low. But I'm going to call on the community members too to tell me, if you're afraid of telling the police, tell me, because I will be the informer. I will be the informer. Because I'm not afraid. And no acts of violence can intimidate me.
And Deputy Commissioner of Police Dr. Kevin Blake is to take office on March 19 as the head of the Jamaican Police Force. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says the government has welcomed Blake's selection by the Police Service Commission.
The Service Commission identified Dr. Kevin Blake who is among the young commissioners as the best prospect to lead the force at this point in time. I said all four members were confident in, but we gave the Service Commission the opportunity to interview, examine their CVs, their background, their prior due diligence and intelligence reports, see who was there. The government, the minister, government operates on a strict no objection basis. Yesterday we would not want to appoint a commissioner. The government had no confidence in. We had no power to protect this, and therefore it was up to the Service Commission to review their career, review their CV, as I said before, and make a recommendation. And we have no problem accepting Dr. Kevin Blake as the next Commissioner of Police.
Dr. Blake will replace Major General Anthony Anderson, whose second contract expires on March 18. Dr. Blake was among 4 Deputy Commissioners of Police, DCPs, interviewed for the position last week. The other DCPs are Clifford Blake, who leads Strategic Operations, Richard Stewart, who is in charge of Administration and Support Services, and Fitz Bailey, who heads Crime and Security. Mr. Bailey is expected to retire soon. Dr. Blake's work on technological and other systems changes in the force has earned him favorable consideration from key members of the Holness administration. He earned a Doctor of Philosophy in Sustainable Development from the University of the West Indies. Dr. Blake joined the Jamaica Constabulary Force on a special entry program in 2002 as Assistant Superintendent and rose to the rank of Assistant Commissioner in 2013 and later DCP in 2020. He's a former head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch under the National Intelligence Bureau. And Michael Jackson, the head of human rights group Jamaicans for Justice, is urging Dr. Blake to publicly articulate his own vision and strategic priorities for the JCF within his first 60 days as commissioner.
The job of police commissioner is certainly a daunting one, and Dr. Blake will need all the support that he can get, not only within the JCF, but from members of the legislature and certainly members of civil society and the wider country in ensuring that we can all play our part in tackling the crime monster in the country. For us, we are calling on Dr. Blake, given the profile of the position that he holds, given the high office that he holds, we're calling on Dr. Blake to publicly state what his strategic priorities are and areas that he would want to achieve while he acts in this important post of police commissioner. We hope that Dr. Blake will adopt a more human rights approach to crime fighting. Obviously, we all want the crime rate to be reduced, but reducing the crime rate does not mean that we take on that paramilitary hard policing.
And opposition spokesman and National Security Senator Peter Bunting has urged Dr. Blake to maintain the impartiality of the police force.
The opposition also uses the occasion of this appointment to remind the new commissioner that the JCF Act gives sole operational superintendence of the force to the commissioner, while policy is the purview of the minister and cabinet. And in some cases, like the extension of a state of emergency, the Constitution gives that responsibility to Parliament. We therefore caution the new commissioner not to involve the JCF in public advocacy for matters that the Constitution reserves for Parliament and on which there is no political consensus. As we approach an election season, we also remind the Commissioner that it becomes especially important that the JCF behave and be seen as an impartial and professional force whose operations should support the democratic process rather than one party or another's partisan interests.
Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark has announced that the personal income tax threshold will be increased to $1.7 million from $1.5 million. It will cost the government $9 billion and will take effect in April. It was one of several major announcements from Dr. Clark as he opened the parliamentary debate Tuesday on the $1.3 trillion budget proposed for the 2024-2025 financial year that starts on April 1. And Dr. Clark also announced a $20,000 tax refund to taxpayers who earn under $3 million annually, as well as an increase in tax exemption benefits for pensioners. The thresholds for pensioners were last adjusted in 2009.
Individuals 65 years and older who are in receipt of a pension are entitled to age relief pension exemption of $80,000, a second one. You have the 1 over 55 and you have the 1 over 65. This one was, it's a pension exemption enabling persons 65 years and over. Therefore, the total, you get 160,000 of exemption. But this over 65 was introduced in 2009. Do the math, 2024 minus 2009, 15 years ago, and it has not changed since. Equity demands that we change this first. Now, Madam Speaker, the government remains committed to ensuring the adequacy of our social protection system, and we recognize significant financial challenges faced by individuals who went before us. We honor you, we respect you, we love you, and we are here for you. As such, Madam Speaker, in an effort to provide further protection for this vulnerable group, it is proposed that the annual pension exemption and the age relief exemption be both increased from $80,000 to $250,000.
And effective April 1, the Students' Loan Bureau will no longer require guarantors for students to access tertiary financing. Students applying for an SLB loan currently require one guarantor, down from the previous two. And the government will be publishing evidence gathered by the FinSAC Commission of Inquiry, which probed the 1990s financial crisis. It means there will be no final report. The FinSAC Commission of Inquiry was set up in 2009. There's been no final report despite costing over $150 million between 2009 and 2017. Dr. Clark says the financial crisis cost 40% of Jamaica's gross domestic product, GDP.
Tens of thousands of businesses failed, hundreds of thousands of individual lives were affected. Thousands lost their homes, their livelihood, and some even lost their lives. The FinSAC crisis plunged Jamaica into deeper macro instability and resulted in a rapid buildup of the debt ratio that has taken us 30 years to resolve and reduce. It had an effect of obliterating opportunity for decades as interest costs consume national resources. Madam Speaker, the material gathered by the Commission consists of contributions from then government officials, economists, academics, former leaders of failed financial institutions, customers of those institutions, people FinSAC'd, people running FinSAC, including those who found themselves, as I said, with ballooning debts, among other stakeholders. Their perspectives on a defining period of the Jamaican story need to be made available to the public. We owe it to the victims of that era, to ourselves, and to future generations to do our best to record for posterity the evidence gathered from the Commission, to make it publicly available, and to have it inspire the production of research reports and cultural creative output.
Meanwhile, in his contribution to the budget debate, opposition spokesperson on finance Julian Robinson criticized the government for not being more responsive to the needs of Jamaicans.
Mr. Speaker, the basic reality is that consumers are getting less and paying more. Prices are high and wages are low. And for the most vulnerable, life is precarious. There are people who wake up in the morning and them don't know how they're going to put pot on fire. Them don't know how they're going to make ends meet. Them don't know how they're going to send the picnic to school. Them don't know where the bus fare come from or the taxi fare. That represents the reality of the majority of Jamaican people. So the reality is that we grew up believing patty is affordable food. Basic patty at $250. That's our beef. If a $300 for chicken or $280. A loaf of bread anywhere between $400 to $500. And if you want a box lunch, The burger box is $500. The coffin box is about $750. And if you get the big box, you're touching $1,000. That is the reality that people face.
Mr. Robinson says funds under PATH, a conditional transfer program for poor Jamaicans, have not kept pace with inflation. He argues that the $10.8 billion of PATH meant to target 284,228 people is not enough. And Mr. Robinson says the time has come for the introduction of a light rail system, particularly in the Kingston metropolitan area.
While reinvesting in the JUTC and restructuring its management and operations to a service delivery focused model is necessary, it is not sufficient. Even if we had the best functioning bus system, our urban centers are growing at such a rate that we need to explore other modes of transportation, wherever they are feasible. Mr. Speaker, successive governments have looked at different options, have studied the problems, but we haven't necessarily implemented them. And while the idea of a light rail is not a new system, is not a new idea, Mr. Speaker, in our view, time has come for the introduction of light rail. So we can look at how we can connect those major hubs. Crossroads, Papine. Look at something from Papine to Halfway Tree, from Constant Spring to Halfway Tree as an example. This would not only alleviate traffic congestion, reduce carbon emissions, but boost productivity.
CARICOM Chairman and Gleaner President Irfaan Ali says a transitional presidential council is to be established in Haiti, which is battling worsening political and violent situations. Prime Minister Errol Henry is expected to resign on the establishment of the council. The announcement was made at a CARICOM high-level meeting in Kingston on Monday. It was attended by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and delegations from Brazil, France and Mexico, among other key stakeholders.
We acknowledge the resignation of Prime Minister Errol Henry upon the establishment of a transitional presidential council and the naming of an interim Prime Minister. I want to pause and thank Prime Minister Henry for his service to Haiti, his service to the Haitian people, and for his personal commitment for the furtherance of the development of Haiti and the advancement of the people of Haiti, and I ask us to give him an applause. The Council will exercise specified presidential authorities during the transition, operating by majority vote. The exclusion from the Transitional Presidential Council of anyone who is currently on a charge, indictment, or has been convicted in any jurisdiction, anyone who is under UN sanction, anyone who intends to run in the next election in Haiti, anyone who opposes the UN Security Council resolution.
Earlier, Prime Minister Andrew Holness told CARICOM leaders and their international partners that it was vital that a solution be brokered.
Haitian voices must be central to any deliberations towards a resolution of the situation. The Haitian people must feel and know that they are a vital part of the process, having ownership in its planning and implementation. However, we who have agreed to facilitate consensus will do an injustice to the people of Haiti if we ourselves are unable to move forward with urgency and resolve.
In the most recent spate of violence, armed men in the capital of Port-au-Prince set fire to police stations and stormed the country's two biggest prisons, releasing more than 4,000 inmates. Gangsters also attacked, looted or torched at least 30 state institutions. The People's National Party's Andrew Swaby was on Wednesday sworn in as mayor of Kingston. The JLP's Delroy Williams, who held the top post for the last 8 years, is the new deputy mayor. The police said a clash between party supporters broke out at the event after PNP supporters allegedly blocked the view of JLP supporters to a televised broadcast. Principal of Tacky High School Errol Bascoe, who is charged with buggery, was offered $600,000 bail when he appeared in the St Mary Parish Court on Tuesday. Mr. Bascoe, who has resigned as the provisional candidate for the People's National Party in St Mary Western, has denied the allegations stemming from an incident at his home on February 29. Generation 2000, the young professional arm of the ruling Jamaica Labour Party, has called for him to step down as principal of Tacky High School. And that's it for this edition of Jamaica Now, your weekly review of the big news stories. Send us your comments at onlinefeedback@gleanerjm.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Gleaner and on Facebook at Gleaner Jamaica. Like this video on our YouTube page, turn on the notification, and subscribe today. I'm Jovan Johnson, and before we go, more from attorney Bert Samuels. Mr. Samuels represented Sean Storm Campbell, one of the 4 men, including Adija Vybz Kartel Palmer, whose convictions for murder were overturned by the Privy Council this week.
You're a 45-year veteran. When you tell me say you're 45 years.
Yeah. But I like when I give interview alone, you know. Miss Samuels have to there beside me.
Sure.
And she have the frame. Yes, go ahead.
Where does this case rank among those others that you have commissioned over in the past?
Well, this is the longest criminal trial, jury trial in the history of Jamaica. It was also in the Court of Appeal. We filed 135 pages of arguments, which was rejected by the Court of Appeal. It's the most voluminous case that I've ever done. It's the most popular case that I've ever done. And it has come to when I'm leaving the career, but I'll hang on because my inherited person, she will move on and she's got the brains. I just have the experience. Sean Campbell's attorneys filed 135 pages of arguments in the Jamaican Court of Appeal, but we didn't succeed there.
Is this an embarrassment for the Court of Appeal?
No, I mean, courts will make these mistakes. Courts will also do things which another court will review. No, intellectuals don't always agree. It's a disappointment to me that they didn't allow the appeal, but it's not a shame on our court. The court has brilliant judges. It's just that this time they got it wrong.
I saw your face when the judgment was handed down. How are you feeling that your client is now not convicted? That's not on his name again.
It's like facing a hard examination and you hear that you passed with flying colors. Not all your colors, but a number of colors are in my wings now. And the hard work of Ms. Samuels, who went up to the Privy Council, I remained here. She went up to the Privy Council and she gave great support to Team Sean Campbell.